So, friends, I welcome all of you to this lecture on technology, society, and politics. Today, we are going to talk about an interesting topic. The title of this lecture is The State and Technology, Hostility or Friendliness. Friends, as a student of technology, as a student of politics, governance, or social science, of course, the connection between technology and state, the connection between technology and state is a matter of curiosity. The connection between technology and state is a matter of curiosity for all of us. Because in our time, how state relate with the technology and how technology relate with the state is an important question. Technology has permeated into all walks of our life. So we are somehow worshipping technology. So that what is the role of state in it is an important question. Friends, in our time, all of us are confused by the preponderance of the state on all technique. We are seeing that state is dominating in almost all the techniques that are in use in our world. And of course, we are also confronted by a confusion. We are also confronted by a confusion. What is our confusion? Our confusion is that on the one side, private capital shaped technique. And at the same time, technique is monopolized by the state. See the conflict. Private capital shaped technique. State also monopolized technique. You see, for example, be it drone technology or synthetic biology, digital technology, the mobile you have, the internet connection you have, the astrophysics. Friends, we know that state and private capital comes in conflict. Why? Because drone technology or synthetic biology or digital technology or astrophysics, no matter what, these are all shaped by private capital. But all of a sudden, the state takes command over it. And they come in conflict. State and private capital come in conflict with the question of technique. The Blue Origin of Jeff Bezos or Virgin Galactic of Richard Branson or SpaceX of Elon Musk, they have launched space tourism. See, all of us are in confusion. All the ordinary people are in confusion. We are thinking whether the monopoly of the state over space research, space technique is ended. Whether the state has lost its commanding power over space technology is ended. And we know state State has always exploited technique. And this is not a new idea. And technology generally was a major source of power in all societies. Technology was a source of power in all societies, let alone the modern society. In a sense, technology is the dominant idea of technology is the dominant idea of those who wield political power in society. Friends, in all societies we can see that those who wield political power always try to put command over technique. That is why a famous technology philosopher, Andrew Feinberg, Andrew Feinberg argues technology is embedded in the social world where it is invented. That means technology is not governed by economic interest. It is not governed by the cultural interest. Rather, technology is embedded. Technology is embedded in which the social system which create technology shape that particular technology. So Facebook, for example, Facebook naturally will develop only in American society. Why? Because American society is an atomistic society and only the Americans need Facebook. Only the Americans need Twitter because their society is atomistic, individualized society. No Indians will ever develop a technology like Facebook because our society doesn't demand such a technology. That's why Andrew Feinberg argues that technology is embedded in the society where it is developed. And just look at the Neolithic and urban civilizations of the Near East, the Neolithic era, the Pharaohs, the Mesopotamians, the Assyrians. There was technique. So people in the distant past lived comfortably in cities of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Their civilizations boasted urban planning, architecture, water management, dams, artistic expression, even knowledge in mathematics, including medicine. And without the benefit of any modern technology which we have now, their society enjoyed all the benefits of a modern like civilization. They had urban planning, they had artistic expressions, they had architecture, mathematics, medicine. In his book Technology of the Ancient Near East, Technology of the Ancient Near East, author Jill L. Baker listed out the pioneering technologies of the Near East people in the ancient world or in the prehistoric world. And he was saying that in the ancient world there were engineering, construction, warfare technologies, textile technologies, ceramic and glass, medicine, food technology. So his elaborate description of these technologies gives us a picture that technology was not a modern phenomenon. Technology was not a phenomenon of the industrial societies. It existed in the antiquity. It existed in the Neolithic world. It existed in Mesopotamia. It existed in the Egyptian world. But the question arises, friends. An important question comes to our mind that we should answer. What is the question? The question is, who endorsed and commanded that technology? Was it the political authority? Was it the political authority? Was it the private capital, or was it the private individual who developed that technology? Was it the state which commanded the creation of technology, or was it the private individual who steered the creation of technologies? It's a difficult question to answer because this is the prehistoric world. We don't have any archival evidence. But friends, available literature, available sources validate that technique and political power coexisted in the Mesopotamian Egyptian civilizations some 6,000 years ago. And friends, in the Near East, we can hypothesize that. We can make a hypothesis, just like what we proposed in the last class regarding Olduvai Gorge, that technology in the Near East grew up hand by hand with state power. Technology in the Near East, I mean Mesopotamia and Egypt, grew up hand by hand with state power. Ruling kingdoms had overseen the development of technique. Rulers, kings and emperors patronized artists, scientists and other knowledgeable persons. But there was, of course, a shift in Hellenic Greece since the 6th century BC. There was a shift in the ancient world since BC 6th century. In antiquity, friends, there was technique in Greece. Ancient Greek technology developed around 5th century BC. The Greeks developed screw, rotary mills, bronze casting techniques, water clock, torsion catapult, and a chart to find prime numbers, and many more. They had technique. There were so many techniques in ancient Greece. But, friends, there was a shift. I'm telling you the point. These techniques, unlike the Neolithic urban civilizations, in the Greek Hellenic world, technique has grown up independently. What do you mean by independently? I mean, no state power supported development of technique. State has no role in development of technique. Polis, that was the word used by the Greeks to refer political power. Polis never intervened in technique. And technique was, or technology wasn't a virtuous act in the Hellenic Greece. Greek state didn't find didn't fund or didn't finance technical development. Scientists in their time, inventors in their time, or for example Archimedes, they have developed technique or invented machines without state patronage. So technique in Hellenic Greece developed out of private capital. So that point is very important, that right from the time of ancient Hellenic Greece, technology was developed not by state power but by private capital. Throughout human history, you may notice that only private individuals develop technique. So people with the passion, curiosity, pursued technique with private money. State didn't endorse technique. And Hellenic science was the work of solitary thinkers. But friends, again there was a change. Again there was a change. Hellenistic Greece, there was a break with the historic development of technology. We see that in the urban civilization of the 6000 BC, state supported technique, but in Hellenic Greece of 6th century BC, state didn't support technique, but in Hellenistic Greece of 3rd century BC, Hellenistic Greece of 3rd century BC, state again supported technique. For example, Alexandrian Museum. So that was patronized by Greek rulers of Egypt, Ptolemies. So Hellenistic Greece was the golden age of science. Kings and emperors patronized bureaucratic science. And friends, keep in mind, science will never grow in bureaucracy. Science is a passion. Invention is a passion. Writing is a passion. Mathematics is a passion. All experiment, chemical or empirical experiments are a passion. You cannot conduct novel activities, creative activities in a bureaucratic framework. That should come from heart. Technique should come from heart, or creativity should come from heart. No state can finance you simply for the reason that state want some technique. It is not the way technique comes. But the point is that bureaucratic science was patronized by kings, emperors. So the Ptolemaic Egypt supported technique. The Ptolemaeus Philadelphus founded the famous Alexandrian Museum. So famous Alexandrian Museum was not a private entity. It was a public entity. That was a research lab. Museum in the Alexandria was a research lab. That was under state hand. That was supported by state power. So the same thing we can see rest of the world. At Athens, for example, Plato's Academy and Aristotle's Lyceum, which was founded in the beginning by private money. So Athens was founded by private money, Lyceum was also founded by private money. Athenian state didn't support these institutions of higher learning. But you can see in Hellenistic Greece, Greek rulers again patronized Plato's Academy and Aristotle's Lyceum. But friends, everything ended by the medieval age. What happened in the medieval age? We are told church didn't endorse the development of any technique. Medieval world was the world of church state. We call it theocratic state. The theocratic state of medieval world didn't give patronage to scientific inventions nor any technique. For them, for the church state, for the theocratic state, inventions were against nature. That's why, friends, we can make another hypothesis that technique was a modern phenomenon. In short, technique was a modern phenomenon. And technique and state are a modern connection. State in the modern world, of course, became a demon of technique. We are told in the beginning, technique developed out of private capital. Private individuals develop technique. Private interest gives fillip to technology. But all of a sudden, the Enlightenment, state started monopolizing science and technology. It was in the era of Enlightenment of the 18th century. In 18th century, what happened? State began to monopolize science and technology. It had a particular path, a particular ideology, and a way of doing. State monopolized because by doing so, state had a goal, it had an ideology, it had a way of doing. First, state developed military technique. The first technique which state developed was military technique. For example, under Frederick the Great, technique attained extreme precision. In Europe, the first modern state which developed technique, military technique, was the French state. Then a financial technique was evolved by the modern French state in order to perform financial functions. Then again an administrative technique was developed by French state in order to perform administrative function. So modern French state developed a military technique, a financial technique, an administrative technique. So Louis XIV, he had the tune of an absolute monarch, but there was a problem. What was it? He did not possess practical means to make his subject obey his rule. That's why, French Revolution appeared. Since the end of 18th century, the situation changed in Europe. Gradually, state encountered technique and commanded over the development of technique since the end of 18th century. Political, social, and human points of view, friends, connection between technique and state is the most important phenomenon of human history. The way in which technique and state collaborated, that was the most important, one of the most important turning events of human history. In the present century, state has encountered a technical phenomenon in a far different way than the traditional technique. So there is rapid expansion of technique in modern times. You see, for example, techniques which were formerly employed only by individuals, in domains where there were no state interference, where there were no state penetration, are now under also the command of state. Because state began to prevail in areas where earlier there were no state intervention. And in such areas, technique developed privately. And friends, this phenomenon started with 19th century. This phenomenon started with 19th century. So the transports, education, even spiritual development, state began to interfere with the state technique. So many techniques were born of industrial civilization. We have discussed it in the previous lectures. So inventions were made possible by industrialization. We know all the inventions of industrial civilization were created not by state power but by private capital. You imagine Carl Benz, Richard Trevithick, George Stephenson, Wright brothers. They were not part of state power. They were private individuals. And their inventions were private pursuit of passion. State was not part of their passion. These were techniques. What engine? Railway locomotive, aeroplane, new common engine, flying shuttle. Friends, all these techniques developed independently of state power. State wasn't behind any of these inventions since 19th century. You see, but the moment that these techniques proved themselves able to operate efficiently on the masses, all of a sudden, state began to monopolize it. State took charge of it. The moment these techniques began to prevail over the masses, state began to monopolize it. When these techniques began to be applicable to the masses, this railway locomotives or automobile industry or textile industry, friends, all of a sudden, when these were applicable to the masses, state began to monopolize it. Once the technique attained a public character, that what engine attained a public character, railway locomotive attained a public character, or aeroplane attained a private character, or flying shuttle attained a private character, friends, all of a sudden, these domains are captured by state power. State took control of it. Beat any scientific knowledge, friends, beat any scientific knowledge. All the scientific knowledge are developed by private individuals in the world. There are no role for the state to develop scientific knowledge. Private interest, private pursuit, private money, private capital shaped scientific knowledge. But the moment the private capital shape scientific knowledge which attain a public character, then the state put its command over it. It start governing this technique. State start governing this technique. Friends, you imagine today it is unthinkable for us. It is unthinkable for us to leave in public hands an efficient instrument such as atomic energy. Do you think that the modern state leave atomic energy in the hand of a private individual? No private individual in the world are ever reported to possess atomic energy. Atomic energy is solely under the hand of state power all over the world. Be it space technology, be it big science, be it nuclear physics. Friends, this is a monopoly of state power. It is unthinkable, friends, even today, that military technology and defense research in the hand of a private person. It is unthinkable. Still, defense research, military technologies are under the hand of state power. So even in 1949, a report was presented to the American Congress. A report was presented to American Congress in the United States. And the report emphasized that the study and production of atomic energy must remain in the public domain. It should not be given to private domain. Friends, even today, it is unthinkable for all of us that a private citizen have the radio technology at his disposal in order to unleash a campaign of agitation all over the world. It is unthinkable because state power never permit that. Same thing happens if it is television or the internet. State command prevails if it is used for mass appeal or mass political propaganda. So all of a sudden state will intervene and monopolize it. So internet is governed by state. The whole of internet is World Wide Web is governed by state. Radio technology is governed by state because state has rules and regulations. So the application of technique is extremely expensive, friends. We know the development of technique today is extremely expensive. Whatever the realm you may survey, any realm of science, you just imagine. Today, private capital is not sufficient in capital to pursue research because research has become expensive. Modern research in nuclear physics implies that state must pay the bill. No private person can afford the cost of astrophysics. So the point is, why capitalism has given rise to mechanical revolution then? Of course, capitalism was profit motivated. Once state realized its potential, state commanded the particular technique which got the mass in its fold. State takes on increasingly numerous activities which are possible by techniques. For friends, in 21st century, even state has developed technique to peep into your private life. State has developed technique to peep into your private life. What you are doing in your privacy at your home. State began to look into your private life because state has developed surveillance technique. So friends, that means private technique and public technique, you know, private technique and public technique are in conflict. Private technique and public technique are in conflict. We know that private capital prepare the technique first. Private capital prepare the technique first. Individuals devote himself to the development of technique. And such a devotion is necessary for the development of technique. Such a devotion is necessary for the development of technique. Only such a person with passion can develop technique. State cannot generate passion. State is rules. State is rules. State cannot, what we may say, cannot develop passion among individuals. So, isolated individuals working for personal motives display imagination. I mean creativity. Friends, states which are a set of rules cannot create imagination. State cannot create Bill Gates. State cannot create Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or Larry Page or Steve Jobs, because they are all people of imagination. State doesn't have any imagination. State are rules. But the moment private capital or private imagination develops technique, then state take over the charge. The individual possess, we know, only limited financial resources. Therefore, he is very much concentrated on the fact that his money should not be wasted. Friends, that's why somebody argued that India grows by night. Why? Because private capital is awake in the midnight. In the midnight, public capital will be sleeping. And public capital is affected by corruption. Private capital is not. So India grows by night. Because private capital is conscious of its investments, conscious of its energy, conscious of its creativity. That's why, friends, when you go to a private college or a private university and pay money for your education, you will study better. You will be studying better. Why? Because you are paying money for education. But in government Brunnan College, you are not paying money. You are not paying fee. Because you are not, you are going to lose nothing. But in private capital, when you buy education, you will be conscious of your money. That's why, friends, technique develops only in private capital. The state comes into contact with this private technique in the modern world, particularly in the 20th century. State comes into contact with the technique, which are elaborated by individuals, private individuals. When state encounters a private sphere, which technique has transformed into a sphere of public, it reacts by taking over that sphere. So family, friends, for example, family was a private realm. But you see, family is also a public realm. State command over it through family technique. Population. Population is private, friends. But state manage population by its technique. Friends, education is private. But friends, state to command over education. State suggests syllabus. State suggests pedagogy. State suggests what the teacher should teach and students should learn. State has monopoly over education. So almost all technology you have developed privately. The point is that state took command over it. So marriage and procreation, it's a private thing, but state command over it. In China, for example, they had a one-child policy. Now they have abandoned it. Now India is thinking about one-child policy. Already in Uttar Pradesh, they have passed a law, the two-child policy in Uttar Pradesh. Already, you might have come across newspaper. State is interfering in the procreative function of individuals. That's a private thing, but state take command over it. And state has developed technique to prevent population growth. So medicine developed private, but it is taken over by state. So state will adopt technique simply because they think that it is functioning. So insurance companies develop insurance technique. Automobile industries develop, automobile technique. All spheres of technical activity have developed their own technique, but state soon takes over it. So state as a whole, friends, it's an enormous technical organism. State itself is a technical organism. State itself is a technology of rules and codes. State commands a vast terrain of techniques. So industrial and commercial techniques. State has industrial and commercial techniques, insurance and banking techniques, organizational techniques, psychological techniques to deal with the citizen, artistic technique, radio, television, motion picture industry, city planning, tourism control. State has scientific technique, including various scientific research laboratories. Now state fund so many research laboratories, so many universities. Planning techniques, general economic planning, transport planning, city planning. Biological techniques, including euthanasia, obligatory vaccination. Today, India is undergoing an obligatory vaccination by the state. Medical inspection, social assistance, sociological techniques to manage, families. State has sociological technique. Friends, the point is that the intrusion of technique into the machinery of state, technique has intruded into the machinery of state, modern state. And today, there is a very serious conflict between politicians and the technicians. There's a very serious conflict between the politicians and the technicians. In democratic societies, this conflict is, mild. There is a very mild conflict. Uh, in some way, technicians and, technocrats and the politicians are cooperating in democracy. And the conflict between technicians or technocrats and the politicians, but in any society, will have the problem of corruption. And the political milieu, the milieu of the state, is generally corrupt, both in democracy as well as in fascist society, communist society, or Nazi society. This is also corrupt. The political milieu is corrupt. But friends, one point we have to notice is that technocrats and politicians are cooperating in fascism. Technocrats and politicians are cooperating in fascism, communism, and other totalitarian and authoritarian political systems. Be it North Korea, be it China, be it Cuba, be it former Soviet Union. So technocrats and politicians were cooperating and are also cooperating. Today, they are also cooperating. But in democracy, this interplay between technocrats and the politicians are, submerged by the political milieu of democracy. Hitler used technique as a myth to validate his regime. Hitler used technique as a myth to validate his regime. So is the communist. So is the fascist. Democracy but offers, coffers to citizen, coffers to the technocrat. Thereby an utopia is given to the citizen. So we are all captivated by technique. Citizens are captivated by technique today in democracy, because there is a nexus between technocrats and the politicians in democracy. So friends, I can give you a simple example of how this works. Imagine you live in a small village. You live in a small village with a few roads. You have only very few roads. And you have only 4 people and you have only 4 cars in the village. You are living in a small village with very few roads, with 4 people, with 4 cars. When driving the road, friends, in the village, which will have only very few roads, friends, there is no need for a formal system of traffic rules, because there is not many people in the village, not many cars in the village, not many roads in the village. So rules are not necessary. Complex traffic rules, complex traffic technique, complex automobile techniques, complex administrative techniques are not necessary. But the moment the village become a city, the moment the village become industrialized, the moment village become urban, friends, everything changes, because there are so many roads, there are so many cars, there are so many people, so many complicated relations. So administrative techniques are required, traffic rules are required, automobile techniques are required, legal techniques are required. So the possibilities of state intervention increases. State will become a demon, because technique, it is developing so many techniques to become a demon. So as technology increases, friends, the number of complex problems arises. As society become urban, as society become, more and more industrial, complex problem arises. So technique will also arise. So the power of state will also increase. To enforce laws, there will be a coercive bureaucracy. There will be police. There will be military. To fund the activities, state will tax you. And there is a taxation technique. So protect your investments, to protect your infrastructure, to protect your technology. You need more military, more state apparatus. Thereby, friends, the growth of technique is also the growth of state. The growth of technique is also the growth of state. So now state is a demon, a leviathan because of technique. So friends, with this, I am ending this lecture. Now the floor is open for, friends, discussion. You can have questions, friends.
Sir, I have a question.